And if you want to give me your opinion on any of those, please let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to see what you think about all of those options. Hi guys, I am so excited. I'm testing a new microphone situation, so I really hope the sound quality is gonna get better and better with each video. And here I am again in my office. You said that was a good background, it was nice with the pink and that the quality was nice, so I followed what you said and here I am again. My last video was very long, so I'm gonna try to keep this one snappy and sweet and short, so let's try to make it not too long. Today I want to do the this way and that way tag sewing edition. So this is not really a tag, but this is an episode of Love to Sew. Please don't drink every time I mention Love to Sew because I really love them and it's not going to be good for your health if you drink every time I mention them. But they had this really fun podcast episode about several options and they talked about it and I had a lot of thoughts and I also wanted to share. So I'm jumping in as well. First, shopping new or shopping your stash. Well, I don't really have a stash. You might know that already about me. Having too much of a stash really stresses me out because I just feel like it's a long to-do list waiting for me to sew. I also can't have too many whips going on in one go, otherwise I really find it super stressful. So I would say a bit of both. I mean, I shop new, but I also, I don't have a stash, so hard to tell. I am a bit anti-stash. So first question, I'm not answering, too hard. I'm neither. I don't have a stash. Let's say I shop new then. PDF or paper patterns. Well, I'm definitely a PDF girl. I learned everything I learned about sewing online, so basically everything I research is online. So for me, PDF is just part of this online sewing world that I'm really into. I also find it really convenient that if you were to lose your pattern, you can reprint it. I just find it a bit safer. They are also generally a little bit cheaper in PDF, so I think having them cheaper and potentially for longer because you can reprint them is a winner for me. The neighbors are drilling downstairs. I hope the sound is still okay. Cutting versus tracing. Apparently people have very strong opinion about this. I'm on the tracing side only because sometimes I actually print my PDF patterns at the fabric store, so it costs quite a bit to have those printed pieces. So if you just cut them, if you want to make them again in a different size, it means repaying for that. Also, it just takes so long to put all of the sticky tape, so I want to avoid doing that as much as possible. I guess if you're sewing only for yourself, I would kind of understand if you team cut, but because I sew for me and my wife, sometimes we are different sizes. I also really enjoy sewing for friends if they ask me. So altogether, I think tracing makes sense because it allows me to make the same patterns in different sizes. Also, sometimes the patterns have different views, different length, for example, pants too short, etc. So for me, tracing makes more sense. I understand that cutting is a bit faster, but as I'm not trying to sew fast because I'm already producing so much and I'm only one person with one body, so I can't make so many clothes. So sewing a bit slower is all right, and so tracing, fine by me. Muslin versus go for it. I can't muslin. I literally can't muslin. Like, just putting energy into something that you're not going to be able to wear, it hurts too much. I know sometimes it's the right thing, but it just hurts too much. So for example, I'm going to make more what you'd consider a wearable muslin, but it's not even really that. It's just I'm maybe going to make a test garment in a fabric I like less, but I don't even consider it as a muslin. I consider it as a let's test it and see how this goes. Leopard print. Oh my god, leopard print. So for example, I've made those leopard print pants, and for those I first made them in a linen that was a bit cheaper, and I tested the pattern with that linen before going into the fabric I really, really liked. So that's kind of a wearable muslin, but I don't see it as a muslin. Again, am I avoiding the question? Maybe. In-store or online shopping? I have to say in-store all the way. I do shop online. You have seen my haul. You can see it there if you want to. But honestly, even in that haul, some of the fabrics ended up being a totally different color than what was listed on the website. So yeah, I find it a bit hit and miss online. I really prefer seeing the fabrics in person. You know what you're getting into. You can touch them, you can see them. I just prefer it. Also, do you also just get decision paralysis? I find that having the smaller curated options of the store sometimes helps, because online the options are limitless and too many options. It's too hard for me. Knit versus woven. I would say woven because the most fun projects I made are in woven fabrics, but I have to say in a wardrobe, you need your knits. I mean, your PJs are super comfy knits, you need t-shirts, so it's not that I would banish knits. It's just if I have to choose between knits and woven, for example, you can sew only one and you have to buy the others. I would make my woven garment, but knits have their place in any wardrobe, so why choose? It's cruel to ask us to choose. Tumble dry versus hang to dry. Well, in this apartment, I actually don't have a tumble dryer anymore, so no longer a question, but even in the previous apartment, I would never tumble dry my Me-Mades because they're too precious. They're really too precious to put in the tumble dryer, so that's something I always hang dry, even if all the rest went into the tumble dryer. Rotary cutters versus scissors, also something that's very divisive apparently. I'm team scissors, and that's because I try to keep my sewing quite minimalistic. So if you have rotary cutters, you need several blades, you need to change your blades, you need a mat, you need more space. With scissors, also if you have a rotary cutter, you also need scissors. So I just have the scissors, they've been great, I love them. Now, for example, I'm doing laundry at the moment, and I do notice that with the scissors you can't quite get the precision you could get with rotary cutters. Also seems like they go much faster, but again, I'm not trying to go fast. I'm trying to not have too many tools, too much stuff. So for the sake of keeping it a more minimalistic hobby and seeing only what you really need, I think the scissors work great. But I'm not saying I'm not a little bit jealous of all the girlies who have their rotary cutters and who can go really fast with them. Just trying to do what works for me here. Following the pattern versus winging it. I don't wing it. If I don't follow the pattern, it's because I have read the pattern and I disagree with the pattern, but I will always follow the pattern. The only time I would really wing it is, for example, I make underwear for my wife and I. I mean, once you've made 10 pairs of knickers, you know how to make knickers. So yeah, I don't follow the pattern anymore, but that's because once you've made so many, you don't need to keep following the pattern because you know the steps and you also know the way of working that you prefer, which are maybe not the steps of the pattern. But I wouldn't say I just take a new project and I just wing it. If I veer away from what the pattern says, it's always a very conscious decision. Bias tape versus facing finish. I hate facing. Every time we have to use facing, it's just, I try to do the thing where you sew it inside, you catch just one thread of your fabric so that it stays, but it's just too much of a faff. It doesn't stay, it moves. I'm not a big fan of facing. I understand that for some garment it really has its place, so I do use facing, but if it's my choice and I get to choose what we're doing, it's definitely a bias finish. Serge edges versus French seams. And actually I don't have a serges, so let's say zigzag stitch versus French seams. And actually I just kind of had a little change of heart with this because I started French seaming everything because I thought, well, I don't have a serger, so I have to do French seams. So I started my sewing journey doing French seams on basically everything. And then I realized, the zigzag works as well, basically a little bit like a serger. So I started zigzagging everything, but then on some really fray fabric, I noticed that it's super annoying because it kind of still frays a little bit. So I have sometimes those skirts and then off the skirts dangles those strands of fabric that I need to keep cutting. So now I realize actually, if you don't have a proper serger for some fabrics, it is much neater to be able to do a French seams. So where I'm standing now is I zigzag all of my knits and I French seams all of my wovens. And I think taking the time to do French seams, yes, it takes longer, but it just so much neater. It feels really premium in your clothes. I really liked that it looks really neat. So it took a bit of thinking. I think I really enjoyed doing the zigzags because it's so much faster. But again, now I realize I'm not trying to go as fast as possible. I have enough clothes, so I'm trying to go more for a premium finish than for as fast as much as possible. Button fly versus zip fly. So I have done my first few zip flies during the Christmas holidays. This was very fun new thing to learn. Honestly, day to day, a zip is easier than buttons. Also, I'm a bit intimidated by the one you need to hammer, so I refuse to work with those ones for now. Maybe for the future, there's always stuff that you find intimidating at the moment, but in the future it'll be fine. At the moment, those buttons, like anything hardware, it's too much for me. But a zipper, all good. And for the button that I have to put above that zipper, I generally put a traditional button, not one of those fancy metal ones. So definitely a zipper fly, but hardware, not for me yet. Sewing your buttons by hand or by machine. Oh my god, if I could sew all of them with my machine. I hate hand sewing. I know it's terrible to say this because hand sewing can create really neat finishes, but just I really like using my machine. If I can use my machine for something and get away with it, not doing it by hand, it's always what I'm gonna choose. So, you know, the buttons, they're so pretty. The ones that have the, what do you say, shank? Those ones, you need to do them by hand. And I'm like, okay, put a nice YouTube video. If you are doing buttons right now, go you. But yeah, if I could do all of my buttons with the machines, it would definitely always be machine. Fusible versus sewn-in interfacing. I didn't even realize that you could have sewn-in interfacing. Why would you? Yeah, I didn't even really realize it was a thing, so I always use Fusible. It's fine. Not the most fun part of the project, but needs to be done. Snip the threads as you go or all at the end. I snip everything as I go, and I mean the end and the back. I used to use the little snipper on my machine, but now I always take my scissors and cut them right to the edge. This way it's always neat as I go. So yeah, I cut as I go. No little threads hanging out, except if I have missed them, of course. Press after every seam or when absolutely necessary. And I was going to say after every seam, of course. And then I realized, oh, what a liar. Liar, 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 liar. I press when absolutely necessary. If I can get away with not pressing something, I don't. And then at some point I'm like, okay, time to go and press. So I try to be a bit strategic with the pressing I have to do. Maybe I'm going to do both arms and then going to press both arms. You know, I don't want to keep having to go to my iron. And if I can not iron it at all, I will just not iron it or iron it later. But yeah, definitely when absolutely necessary. I wish I had a different answer, but I have to be honest with you guys. Late night versus daytime sewing. And here, I mean, I have a day job, so I can sew during the weekend or after work in the evening, but I wouldn't say late night. I mean, I'm never in bed late, so there's no late night for me. Just late night doesn't exist in my house. But I would say, well, if I sew in the evening after works, maybe it's more evening sewing, but it's not my favorite. I find that if I'm too tired, I feel a little bit intimidated to try some project, so I want to do something very simple. So mostly I prefer sewing in the daytime. My ideal way is it's the weekend, I have the whole day in front of me and I can sew, and then once I get too tired, I go outside, I stretch a little bit, maybe I start sewing a little bit later again. But definitely I want to be during the daytime, nice and rested. I find it quite important to create good quality sewing. The last question from the podcast episode was slow and steady or frantic chaos. And I have to say it has to be slow and steady for me. I can't sew with the stress. Otherwise I feel like I would make mistakes. I just don't like chaos in general. I'm quite a calm person. I don't like feeling stressed or feeling chaos around me, so I keep tidying as I go as well. I mean, I sew in my living room, so if we have to stop for dinner, I kind of quickly tidy everything up, so there's never, you know, this sewing room chaos, because I don't have a sewing room, so things can't get out of control and stay messy. So I do clean as I go mostly. I mean, I keep all of my threads together and I put them in the bin once I'm finished, but yeah, I don't think I could do it in chaos. I don't thrive in chaos at all. I know some people do, but not me. So that was all for the questions from the podcast episode, but I actually wanted to add 2 questions because I have seen those topics coming back quite a lot, and one was selfish sewing versus gift-giving sewing. And I sew a lot for myself, and it's true that the majority of my projects are for myself, but I really enjoy sewing for others. If my wife asks for something, it always bypasses the queue, and I'm like, yeah, I want to make her project first because I'm so excited to make it for her and to give it to her. It's the same if friends ask for something. I feel really a lot of motivation to sew for someone. So I do a lot of selfish sewing because I know what I would like. I can make it for myself. I have the vision, so I'm very happy to sew my own wardrobe, and that's most of what I do, but I really enjoy sewing for others. Especially if they have asked for something and I know it's going to make them very happy. I feel a bit more in between for making surprise presents, because what if they don't like it and you spend all of that time on something that's not exactly what they want? But otherwise, yeah, I think it's really fun and really gratifying when you see them wear what you have made for them afterwards. And the last point I wanted to talk about was budget sewing or expensive sewing. And here I just want to out myself a little bit. When I started sewing, I saw all of those YouTube videos which were like $3 dress, and you know, the people go to those discount stores and they find a really cheap fabric, or they find something thrifted and they make something amazing out of it and it looks great, and it's like, oh, they have this amazing garment for $3. But when I go to the fabric store, my fabric costs 50 euros, and then it ends up being even more expensive than if I had bought something ready to wear, or at least more expensive than if I had bought something secondhand. And at first I was like, oh, I didn't expect it to be quite such an expensive hobby, but then I came to accept it because actually I do like really high quality fabrics. I think it lasts longer. I'm also a very smelly and sweaty person, so having nice quality fabric on me is really important, because otherwise I'm just not gonna feel comfortable. I just don't thrive in polyester, so I have come to accept that I will never be the YouTube channel which is like $3 dress. No, not gonna happen for me. I'm all about the expensive fabrics. I wish I wasn't, but that's how it is. So here you are. I'm outing myself. I'm a bougie fabric type of person apparently. So I hope you enjoyed this video, which was a bit more chatty, and that it was interesting for you to know what are my preferences. I'm really curious if you have some points where you totally disagree with me, or you agree with me, that's good too. Maybe you want to comment what you do and what is your preference. Please let me know in the comments and we can have a little chat. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to come back here in the future, don't hesitate to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!